Hi, I'm Rita Lynn and welcome to my channel, Rita Lynn Studios. I have a question for you. What if I was to ask you to name the 5 essential things or tools that you need in order to do quilting? I would imagine that they would include things like your sewing machine, rotary cutter, the mat for which you can cut your fabric on, things of that nature. But if I was to also ask you, what are the essential tools that you need to do art quilting or fiber art quilting? What would they be? Many times when I'm doing my classes, the 2 things that I'm asked the most are about what tools do you use in order to do the vessels, and what tools and supplies do you use in order to do the flowers. So I thought in this video what I would do is show you a shortcut to some of the essentials that I feel are absolutely necessary in order to get the results that you want. We're going to take a look at what I need in order to get professional looking vessels and excellent looking flowers. So let's go over to the work table. When it comes to making the vessels, the things that are important to me in the beginning and to make for successful vessels are about 5 important items. So I'm going to go over them with you. The first one that I start with is I like to have my patterns on a file folder. If you have something that is as thick as a file folder, that would be great too. Because I cut this out so many times, I want some kind of a firm paper, more than just like an 8.5 by 11 typing paper. So I always use file folders for that. But there's another reason why I do. When I am creating a new vessel, having a file folder helps me to put together my new ideas. I use painter's tape, and being able to do my mock-up this way is an enormous help. So that's number one of the essentials that I have. Number 2, the next essential that I have is having a good stabilizer. I usually recommend, and I will put that in the description. The stabilizer that I like to recommend is by the brand name of Pellon, or the one that I have that is manufactured for us that is on the website also. The important thing is I'm looking for a stabilizer that is double fused, has fusible on this side, and has fusible also on this side. That's necessary so I have a place where the fabric can adhere. And I need something that's going to be flexible. See how I need it to be semi-firm? It can bend. It has to do that in order to create the shapes that I want. I'm going to pop this in so you can see how flexible it is. And then it pops itself right back out. So that's another important piece, is to make sure you've got a stabilizer that is not so firm that you can't fold it and maneuver it. They do have stabilizers that are that firm, and they're great to use for bags, but I want something that's got the flexibility and is double fused. The next thing when I'm making vessels that I think is very important to have is either a Teflon sheet like I have here. I have it on top of the wool pad that I use for ironing when I'm using it for demos, or laying it on top of my ironing table when I go there to do ironing. And what I want to do is to be able to have the fusible to make sure that nothing, like the glue specifically, gets onto anything else, and that means specifically my iron. So I use that, and in addition to that, if you don't want to buy a Teflon sheet, you can get this parchment paper. You can really get it anywhere. You can get it at the grocery store, get it at a hobby store. I even get it at those dollar stores, whatever their name is. This is the parchment paper. So whenever I'm doing this kind of work where I've got a stabilizer, I always make sure that I'm going to have the top and the bottom of it covered. So what I'm getting ready to do here is press the stabilizer and the fabric together. I've heated the iron on cotton so that I can make sure that I get a really good blend. I should say a really good merger between the stabilizer and the fabric. But I also want to make sure that it's not going to stick to anything else. So that's where this becomes very, very helpful. So I always make sure that we're doing something like this. Actually, you know what, guys? I would also add, you could do it this way. Especially if you've got a light cotton. excuse me, a light colored fabric, because once again, we had a terrible experience happen at one of the classes where the students before our class came in, and we were using exactly this particular fabric, and there had been gunk all over the iron, and guess where it went? So it's a practice that I am just a real stickler about. So that again is one of the key things that I feel you need if you're going to be doing any kind of art quilting like this. Another product when I'm doing my vessels that I absolutely adore and always have handy is this little mini iron. There's another size also that I use. It's a little larger, but it also will help me when I have vessels that are much larger, or if I'm wanting a face that is a little bit more available to me than this one is. But in this case, this would be bulky. I'm trying to turn the edge of the fabric onto a stabilizer that has fusible on it. So if I try to use this iron, it's going to be too bulky. If I try to use my standard iron, once again, I'm trying to get to just the tip of the iron, and it's going to 9 times out of 10 end up getting heat in here, which ends up getting on there. So let me show you what I do with this one, because I absolutely do not like to live without it. I usually will take a small piece of parchment paper, and this is a hot iron, so I'm going to roll it over onto the stabilizer, and then I slip this piece of parchment paper right over this so that I can make sure that I've got a nice clean line right here. It follows the shape of the stabilizer without getting the glue all over the place, and I slip that right there. This allows me then to have the freedom to be able to have more room to do the ironing of putting the fabric over to the sides of the stabilizer, but making sure that I'm not getting any glue on the iron face. This is I can't tell you the number of times that I use this little iron for a number of just different things. But see how smooth this is? And then where I broke the tension here and I'm ready to wrap these over, I do the same thing. I find the easiest place to begin, pull it tight, hold it there for just a second while I slip this under it, and away we go. It is a hot iron, so you have to be careful, but it's also just a great, great tool to have. Speaking of essential things, besides having a Teflon sheet for the top and the bottom, and or using parchment paper to protect the products and the fabric that you're working with, I also take apart a piece of the Teflon, about this size. What is this, about 3 inches, so that I can get into these unusual places without any awkwardness. For example, if I wanted to straighten this out, or if the fabric for some reason did not adhere the way I want it to, I set my iron on cotton, but rather than take the chance that I might have gunk on here or I might damage this in some way, what I'll do is have this thinner piece of Teflon that I can slip right in there, and then I can use this heat that I need in order to make any changes that I want. And 1, 2, 3, I've got it all smoothed out again. Here's another tip with something with this. Take the Teflon sheet. You can lay it over let's say, I can't find one here, but let's say this popped in and I wanted it to pop back out. All you have to do is take your Teflon sheet, lay it there, cotton hot, back and forth, and what this does is it warms up the glue, the adhesive that is there, and allows you to manipulate this again. So hold it into the space you want until it cools, and then you've got it all back functioning the way it's supposed to. That's how I got the curves on this one, is I used a piece of this Teflon, slipped it right in here, took my iron. I don't want to lay it down because it'll uncurve. Well, I guess I could go ahead and do that. And I pressed it down so that I could warm this up, but protect everything by having the Teflon sheet there. And then I just curved it. It's warm, so it's manipulative. And I held it in that position until it was no longer warm. And there you go. Just another tip on how you can use some of these essential things that I think are extremely important. One of the other things that I absolutely will not be without is my glue gun. I use this with just about everything that I'm doing that is dimensional. When I am working, for example, on something like this, it's ideal for me to be able to glue these on rather than to have to manipulate inside here and stitch them on or put them on one panel before I put the entire unit together. So I really like the idea of being able to just dab it with the glue gun. I also have more ability to manipulate these dimensional leaves when I know that I can put a dab of glue underneath it here and a dab of glue on the back. Here's a good example of it right here. I used a dab of glue right there to anchor it down, and then I lifted it and put another dab of glue right there. It really does help a lot. And then when I'm putting all these petals together, I would put 3 together, glue it, put 3 together, glue it, and then put the 2 units together and glue it all together. It saves hours and hours and hours of frustration. So I love being able to do that. I see something here I'm going to do. Hadn't planned on this, but let's do it anyway. I see a little piece here that I want to correct. I can get a little bit of heat on this and reshape it. Okay, I'll cut that little piece of frayed hair right there from the fiber, and we'll go on to the next hint. I love being able to show you how I make my beautiful dimensional flowers. For example, on here, I want to start actually not with the flowers, but with the butterfly. And you can see that I've made it dimensional. It's stiff, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And that's one of the things that I'm just so in love with in order to make the flowers be so dimensional. All of these can curve up. These have traveled with me, and yet they're very flexible. If I heat these again, I can manipulate them pretty much into any position that I want them to be. But what I want to do is show you the product that I use. It's called Heat and Bond Ultra. I really can't live without this if I want to make really quality fabric dimensional flowers. You can get this pretty much anywhere. Again, always start out supporting your local quilt store. They will know about it, but it's important that they probably have Heat and Bond, you guys, but you want the Heat and Bond Ultra, and it normally comes packaged like this, or it can come in longer rolls, or you can buy it by the yards. And this is what it looks like. Let me put this one together here first. Here's a tiny little piece of it, and I want to scratch it so that you can be aware of the thickness of the adhesive that's here. You might even be able to see the grid on it. So on one side, we have this. On the other side, it's the fabric. I mean, it's the paper that this adheres to. And how we use this is we're going to be ironing this to one side of a piece of fabric, cutting it out, peeling it away, and repeating it again so that I have strengthened this particular unit, and I can then heat it again and manipulate it any way that I want. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I have a piece of fabric. I've already adhered or pressed the hot Heat and Bond Ultra onto it, and as I peel it away, you can see the shiny side. That is all the adhesive that is on one side of the fabric, and it already has given it a little more strength than if it was just like this, where it has actually not enough body in order to be a dimensional flower. So what I'll do is I'll cut a piece off so that I can demonstrate for you, and then I want to put another piece of fabric right on top of it. And what I'll more times than not do is always cover these things with a piece of Teflon, because I don't want any of the glue to get onto the iron or any other place other than bonding the two fabrics together. So I have my iron on cotton dry, about 5 seconds at the most. I'll let that cool, and then what I'll have is a product that you can see is much, much stronger than a product that just has 2 pieces of fabric together, which is what I would have here. And what I need is something that's got more body to it, like this one. So what I'll do at this point is I'll show you what happens with what I consider to be the next most important thing, and that is when I'm doing dimensional work of any kind, I actually use for the flowers, I actually use my hand. That's one of the essential tools, if you will, that I need. So I'm going to take this little red flour, and I'm going to heat it. And what I'm doing is I'm getting not only the fabric warm, but the glue that is holding the two pieces together. So I've done this for about 5-6 seconds. This is on cotton, hot. And then what I'm going to do is put this in the palm of my hand. It's warm, it's not hot. And I kind of cup it, I kind of curl it until I don't feel the heat anymore. And now I have just permanently turned this into a dimensional flower. Let me do this again so you can see. This is all that there is to it. And you can just, your imagination can go wild with all the different things that you can do as far as bending it into all different shapes. So I do that. Wait until it's cool. I usually use the back of a pencil. And then I'm going to add some beads in there. And I'm ready to go. Now, if I don't like that shape, it is so forgiving. All I need to do is press it again, press it down, and I can reshape it any way that I want. And you can get some beautiful flowers like this. I want to show you another trick while we're doing this. And that is, think about the design that you're using. When I'm doing flowers, I don't need 20, 30 different flower shapes. This common little shape of 5 petals can be several things. For example, here it is a geranium. And the way that I know it's a geranium is I have, for example, identified it with the leaves of the geranium. But then here, very same flower. Now I have a lilac bush. And just by using the difference in color, and if I want to go a little bit further, I went into the blues, and now we have a hibiscus. So this, you can always know that if you study Mother Nature, actually her designs are pretty simple. And by using color, you can identify them all a little bit differently. And then finally, I want to show you one outstanding trick that I have when I'm doing a lot of these flowers. When I made this art quilt, I had to figure out how I was going to make these stand up so that they would be able to be very dimensional. And I thought about different ways of doing it. For example, here's the little pattern, and I cut out these little feathery things so that I could turn it over this way, which is what I did. I would heat it with the iron, and then I would turn it over this way. However, look how many are in here. This is going to take me a long time. So I decided that I was going to try something else. I don't know where this idea came from, but I will tell you it works beautifully. I took an old curling iron, and now I don't have to worry about this being close to my fingers. I don't have to worry about how many I've got in here, probably a good 30 or 40 of these. All I had to do was just put it right inside this little curling iron, let it cool off, and start to begin putting these together. I just thought that was the coolest recycling thing that I had ever gone through before. So use your imagination. It is amazing what you can find out there to recycle with. Another thing that I do is when I am doing these feathers, and again, it's because I have the heat and bond that I do have, I would normally put this on a regular iron, but I can also just manipulate how I want it to be manipulated by putting it under this curling iron. See how I'm able to get this beautiful little curve to it? And if that's not enough, I can do it on the other side. Heat it up, and then shape it any way that I want, and it'll dry in that shape. And then for the final thing that I absolutely cannot live without when I am working with all these things is to have dryer sheets. This is the one thing that will absolutely keep the plate of my iron as clean can be. What I do is usually just run this over it. The iron is hot at the time. Right now it's not hot, but I will run it over it. And then if I have to, I can go ahead and scrub. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm getting the glue off the base here. Now this is not a hot iron. I turned it off, but it's a wonderful way to be able to just smoothly get all of the gunk off of your iron. I hope that you have enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed giving these tips to you. There'll be more down the line. So now that you've had an opportunity to learn a little more about the supplies that I use in order to make sure that I am successful in finishing with professional three-dimensional products like my vessels and three-dimensional flowers, I hope you'll give this a try. I also hope that you'll subscribe to my channel. That helps us out a lot to be able to continue to give you all of the videos that you're looking for. I'd love to hear down in the comments what are the supplies that you do rely on, not only when you're doing regular quilting, but what you're doing as far as the art quilting goes. There's a lot of more tips that we'll be adding on shorter videos also. There's so many things that you all share that really help. So subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll read all the comments and get back to you as many as I can as soon as I can. And thanks for watching.